Hi, welcome to justcollect.com. Thanks for joining us today. We're going to talk a little bit about grading, centering, card flaws, etc. I'm going to use some Jerry Rice's here as an example and take you kind of through the scale of some of the grading characteristics. As you can probably see a little bit here, it's going to be difficult in this video to really give you some specifics. But this card is a PSA 8 on a scale of 1 to 10. This is a near mint card. As you can see, the corners are sharp. It's well centered. Back is decently centered, but the corners have no wear, look as if they just came out of the pack. This would be an OC or an off center. It's a qualifier that falls onto the same card in near mint. This would technically be 2 grades lower as far as the classification, or an X mint card. As you can see, the top bottom centering on this has significantly shifted, much higher to the top. The back is still actually nicely centered, but the front centering is what causes the off-center qualifier that's noted on the card. The next grade below that would be a 7 or a near mint, and it looks very similar to the 8. Well centered, sharp corners. You see a little white showing, starting to show in some of the corners, most specifically the lower left. And the back centering still is decent, it falls within the tolerances. You can check our grading page for any details and specifics with regards to what qualifications are needed for each grade. This is a 7 ST, which is a stain qualifier, and I'll show you that in the back in just a second. But again, it's a little bit shifted, still falls in within the grading parameters for centering for 7, but it does have a gum stain on the back, and this would be treated as about an X card or a 5. Qualifiers typically drop the card down about 2 grades. This is an X Mint 6. Again, presents very similar to a 7 and an 8, very well centered, but has a little bit more wear, may have additional smaller flaws. Back centering is still decent, but it's more shifted to the right. And this is an X Mint 6. This is a VG X4. Again, it presents quite well, but has a light little surface wrinkle in it. Has a small stain on the back as well. And there's a couple raw cards that at first glance actually look like they're in pretty good shape. But both cards wouldn't grade no higher than a VG3 because of some creasing. And you can't really see it in this video, but there is some minor creasing on the cards as well as some additional wear. I get a lot of calls with people saying I've got a bunch of cards that look pretty good. And we get cards in that look like this. As you can see, the rounded corners, the wear. And again, people look at these, they were intended to be played with. These cards would grade a VG3 in very good condition, and very good, unfortunately, in card grading is not a high grade. But these have been loved and have some rounded corners, not uncommon. With regards to centering, this card is very well centered. Left to right borders and the top bottom borders are very similar. And this card, while it's still sharp, has a significant shift to the right, which makes the left border a little bit smaller. And it's probably about 70-30, maybe a little bit worse centering wise. And then using that same example on the identical card, you see this card is relatively well centered, and this card is significantly shifted to the right, leaving a very thin border on the left. If this card were perfect in every other facet, the best you'd probably be expecting to grade this would be an X5 because of this centering, possibly a near mint off center. Some other flaws that you'll find: this card has been trimmed. Also has some back residues from being in an album. And this would typically grade off as authentic, trimmed. If it hadn't been trimmed, it would still grade poor to fair at best, with the flaws there. It's another 33 Gaudy that has some paper loss and some trimming as well. The paper loss will typically result in a poor grade. And this is what we typically would get when somebody has some vintage cards that said they look absolutely mint. This is actually a very, very good looking 1948 leaf that we have had signed. Sharp corners, a little hit in the corner in the upper left, probably grade out about an X mint. But for being, as old as it is, it looks great. But commonly people say, oh, the card looks great for being 50 years old or 70 years old. It doesn't matter, unfortunately. Grading is still subjective, whether this card is a T206 that's over 100 years old or a 2015 baseball card. They're going to be treated the same. This card, as you can see, looks absolutely fantastic for being over 100 years old. but does have some backflaws, some album residue, a little hint of paper loss. And it still grades a PSA 2, which is good. It's not a phenomenal grade, but this is a situation where people can buy a card with absolutely phenomenal eye appeal and get a significant discount versus paying hundreds upon hundreds of dollars for cards graded much higher. Some of the flaws that people usually don't understand and we have to explain to them are centering, paper loss, creases. People look on the internet and see a card, let's say they see a Heine Wagner and it sells for a couple grand, and they call us up, I've got that card, or Heine Wagner, and they think it's a Hannes Wagner. And the hardest thing is for people to use the internet and get the information and transpose it correctly. Not all cards are mint just because you take it out of a pack. Not all cards are mint because you put them away 50 years ago. So look at your cards, examine your cards, check our grading page. If you have any questions, please contact us via email or call us on the phone. We're always buying vintage collections from 1879 to 1979. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks for joining us.